Hi, and welcome to the second episode of 24 Astro Podcasts. In this episode, I will go through the planets, the archetypes of the planets in astrology. I feel like this is a good way to collect them all, have one audio that you can go to when you are trying to really deepen your understanding of something, of a placement or like a video of mine. And if you want to understand it deeper, listen to this audio. And like I've said in different videos of mine, that astrology is a living language, so it deepens all the time. So this is my current understanding as of studying astrology like a mad woman for 2 years. And this is where I'm at now with my understanding. It's a mix between psychological astrology, esoteric astrology, weaving in the theories of Carl Jung, and I think it's like a mix of different aspects now to this point. And this is what works for me, as I'm a fellow traveler like you, trying to understand the world, my place in the world, and just working with uncovering and unfolding more and more of life. So if you might know, if you've checked the descriptions, sometimes I write out my astrology chart, and for me it feels very vulnerable and heart-filled to do this, because it gives me kind of a sense like I'm standing in front of you naked, like you see my essence when I do that. So in this podcast, I will also put my astrology chart down below, and to give you a very brief overview so that you know that, understand a bit about where I'm coming from, how, like, what makes me tick and so on. Because if you are in the astrology world, you kind of see people through the archetypes of the zodiac signs. So I think it helps you connect to me and see where my mind is. So my big three, I won't say every one of them, even though I will probably, I think in this, since I'm going to go through all of the planets, I will draw parallels to my own chart to make examples. But to give you a brief overview now, I'm an Aquarius sun in the 4th house. I'm a Scorpio rising, and I have my moon in the 5th house in Pisces. And if you followed me for a while, you know that this placements, the house placements that I'm saying now, is a bit different, but that's because I moved from understanding astrology from the Placidus house system to whole signs. And I still love both. I use both sometimes, but I'm more drawn towards whole signs now. From a past incident in my life, I have videos on this where I explain that, like, the credibility of a birth chart, like the time is not always accurate, so it's much more precise to use whole signs, as Placidus can shift your entire chart with just, like, if it's off half an hour, it can shift everything. So therefore I am more, as of now, using whole signs. So that is my big three. And I will go into this now with just talking about the different archetypes. So I will start with the sun. The sun is your consciousness. I'm gonna say the archetype, and then I'm gonna talk about it for a while until I feel like I've collected the most that I can around that archetype, and then move on. So the sun, I think I started with thinking about it as it's the conscious ego. And now I realized it's not only that, it is more this conscious awareness where you start to understand and register yourself. So in my view, how I see this now is that consciousness is cause and effect. And this means we see our environment, we see our actions, we see our interactions with the world, and then draw conclusions from that. And this is basically the ego's logical mind. It's the linear thinking that calculates our surrounding based on what happens and then draws conclusions and tries to predict the future and the past. And this, to me, the ego is a part of this, but it's not only this, because ego is more like this persona, the social mask that you put out onto the world. And this is more like the rising sign for me to this point. So the conscious awareness then, it's this pulling of your attention. You're drawn towards this. And if we use the Jungian lens of astrology, it's where you are pulled to individuate. And this means where you are pulled to explore your fullness. In life, we are conditioned from our childhood up until our adulthood. We're learned or we're taught social rules, social conditions that we need to follow in order to fit into society. And this creates a split from the personality. We deem some aspects of ourselves as good and some we repress and put down as a shadow. I have a masterclass in my other YouTube channel where I have a channel just specifically towards overeating and emotional eating, where I talk about social conditioning. And when I made that, it turned out so good. And I thought that I will probably some time in the future mention it on the astrology channel. And I think it could be something that is worth watching to understand individuation, because social conditioning is this part where we repress certain parts of ourselves and try to cling to the persona. And this creates shadows. The whole life journey is about accepting and allowing the shadows and not try to repress them so much that they become if we repress the shadows, we will project them outside ourselves because we can't hold them. They're so uncomfortable. And this creates separation. It creates suffering because we have created separation from ourselves to humanity, and it strengthens the ego. And if we're too ego-driven, we will feel emptiness inside because our soul is not with our experience. We feel this lacking. So we need to have a balance between the soul and the personality. And this is the individuation process according to Carl Jung. And what this means then in astrology is that this is the area where you are experiencing this the most. Like you have your life force in this area. So your consciousness, your ability to register cause and effect is pronounced in this area. And according to also what zodiac sign it is in, that sets the tone for this experience. And if we think about the astrology natal chart as it represents your microcosm of the macrocosm, so as above, so below, the solar or the sun in astrology is your middle point, is your almost the most pronounced planet in your chart. And it depends also, because I find it sometimes I want to put like a percentage of how much does the sun affect your life, how much does this affect your life. And that all depends on the big three, like rising, sun, and moon. And also if you were born during the night or the day. And it depends on the aspects in your life. It depends on like this, if you have a stellium in your chart. It depends on so many things. So I find it very hard to try to put a percentage wise of what is most important overall for most people. So it can't really, I think, be like a cop-out that works for everyone. So I will say that the sun is just very important for you to gain this awareness about, or gather information about how the world works. We can start to maybe I would say that it's like our it's hard to really pinpoint what consciousness is. This is like a philosophical, real big problem. Like in science, we can't really, we don't have an answer for this even in science, like neuroscience, we have a very big problem of telling the essence of what consciousness is. We can pinpoint what parts of the brain light up and try to understand it from a point of view that we can see what happens if we do like a brain scan. Like we can see what parts of the brain lights up, but it's hard to pinpoint. We can observe but not understand the cause, the real cause. And what consciousness is, if it's like universal intelligence living through us and wanting to understand itself, that's hard to say. I'm just a mortal here, 31 years old, trying to figure life out. And I'm excited though about the aspect of not really knowing what consciousness is, because I think it is also a very deep drive to understand and get to know this consciousness. If consciousness is also something that we can feel, like the presence of being just in the moment and not being in the mind and worrying about the future or the past, it's this observing presence effect that we can tap into. Okay, this became very deep now, but it's interesting to ponder on what consciousness is. But okay, to draw it back to astrology, it is this drive to where you are wanting to observe life and like where you have your life energy, because I find this is kind of like this energetic like plug-in point where if you are in your sun sign, you like, if depending on the house it's in and the zodiac sign, you can like get to understand more consciousness about this placement. But if you are in this energy, it's kind of like you have this never-ending like youth wellspring of energy, your vital energy. You feel like totally yourself. And depending, of course, if it's in the shadow aspect or if it's in the gift, and that's worth exploring also much deeper. And that you could do by checking the shadows and the positive aspects of the zodiac sign, and then putting on the layer of the sun, like I just explained. And also something that is very important is that consciousness, it's not only in this aspect, it can be that it's the most of your vital energy here, and it's where you're pulled to explore with your cause and effect understanding how it works. And your ego might be intertwined here, that you are identifying with this or something like this, but also it's kind of like you have the consciousness, of course, in all aspects of your life, and using your consciousness, like this understanding energy, this registering energy, this attention, your willful attention is something that you need to bring with you in all placements, especially in the moon placement. And that is because what we are trying to do is individuate, so trying to bring in all aspects of the psyche into an understanding so that we can not work on autopilot and just experience life as stuff happens and just react instinctively, but we want to interact with life and respond to life. So the consciousness aspect is in all parts, but it might be more pronounced in that zodiac expression. So very important to understand the zodiac behind your sun. So let's say you have your sun in Libra, for example. Checking the mythology behind Libra. Understanding what it's trying to tell you, because mythology, if it's like Greek mythology, it's always very like fairy tale-esque. And the symbolic teachings from the mythology, that's what you want to tap into. You want to understand what is this mythology explaining, and then drawing out the symbolism from the zodiac, the story of the zodiac, and learning the keywords about the zodiac. So if we took Libra, for example, first understand, or you don't have to do it first, but I'm just saying the different layers of how you could deepen your understanding of the zodiac sign. So checking the mythology, like learning it and seeing interpretations of the mythology, trying to understand it yourself. What is this really saying? Checking the keywords on Libra. So just seeing all the keywords and trying to find a red thread through them all, and trying to just understand what the mythology is trying to convey. Looking at the glyph of Libra, trying to see all of the symbolism in this zodiac sign. And if you keep on building your awareness on the zodiac sign, eventually you can put on the lens of, okay, what does it mean if it's in my sun sign? What does it mean if it's in this house? And then this is where astrology can become very confusing in the beginning. If you take up or take on too much, you become so scrambled in your mind. And this is where the ego is just longing for like power, like knowledge, and wanting to understand everything so that it can crack the code of life. It can be that, but also it can be just that you have this longing for understanding yourself deeper, and this allows, if you are in more of this like compassionate or healthy relationship to astrology, then you can accept that it will take time until you learn what all of the symbolic language of astrology means, and then you can take it in your own tempo, so learning more and more and more, and then eventually the intuitive understanding will kick in, and that's out of our control. It's just landing when you are ready. I realized that I do find it very rewarding and interesting to talk about astrology in a sense of how do we use it. And I think that's also why I'm very drawn to give you practical advice on how to use astrology, because I always feel like I want to convey more than just the basics. I want to like incorporate the spiritual journey also, and the teachings that are behind astrology, because they are in the same realm as spirituality. And if you are listening to this, remember, if you know, I have Mercury in Pisces, so when I talk, it's very non-linear, very intuitive. So it will be like this, that sometimes I talk for a very long time about something and it might feel like I'm getting off course, but it's all part of the bigger whole. And I trust that my words come out in the right way. So, okay, if we're going to let's see if there's something more that I want to say about the sun placement. It's the middle point of the self. And when I say self, I mean the whole totality of the person. So not just the ego, because the ego is the social mask, what we think we are. What we have been mirrored in the past are qualities that we have learned or got taught that they are appropriate. They are good qualities to have. And we try to repress the shadows and not pretend that they are there. And we hope that they will disappear, but they don't. So the self, that is the ego and the shadows and the soul. Everything is the self. So the symbol of the sun is the self. It's your ego and soul intertwined in its highest expression. And there your consciousness wants to, like if it was a current, it wants to go there. So you have your vital energy, your life force there. And this is no small thing. Like this, it can take a whole lifetime for you to understand your sun sign and do it in a healthy way. Depending on the aspects to your sun, of course, and the rest of your chart, but it is something that is very, like individuation is the life purpose for a human on this earth. Because we do have so many shadows, especially in this day and age. So we are longing for wholeness here. We want to be our whole person. It's the light of the conscious awareness. And it can give us life purpose because it is this clarity of when we do our sun sign in a good way, when in a healthy way, we tap into this pool of energy. And it doesn't have to be like a career, you know this probably, that's like, it's not your sun always, that is like the career, it's more your MC, you have to check the 10th house, like it's so much, so it's not just like, yeah, I would say more like it's the whole big picture. It's the center of your solar system, like the solar. So it's the consciousness driven towards the self, I would say. Okay, so let's continue on. I've already talked for 23 minutes, so maybe I will not do all of the planets today. Maybe I will do it in parts. Maybe that's better. Because I do feel like there's a lot of things to say about each and every one of them. And I don't want to rush into anything. So the moon is interesting in the way I view astrology now. It's, if you look at astrology, because we do get this archetypes and the symbolism from the reality. So if we look at the astronomy of the sun and the correlation to the moon doesn't cast its own light, it reflects the sun's light. So with that said, the sun is our conscious full wholeness, like it's the self. And the sun therefore is the personal unconscious. This means it's the parts of you that you might not understand or have put into words. It can entail your past karmic history, your childhood, your relationship to your mother, like this inner landscape, your emotional needs that you might not have figured out yet, depending on who you are as a person, your whole chart, of course. But it's so, like, I can't state this enough. Understanding your moon placement is so important. If we would put this into Joe Dispenza language, if you know who he is, he says that around 95% we work on unconscious habits, 5% is the consciousness. Just a very general number. If we would put this onto astrology, looking at the sun as your consciousness and the moon as your unconsciousness, that would mean that 95% of your totality is in the moon patterning. So understanding the moon from the zodiac sign, the house placement, and also then adding on aspects could give you a very big hint on how you work internally, how you experience yourself. How you experience yourself in solitude. Like not in relation to other people, that's more your social mask, your persona, but how you experience yourself. And here we have archetypes, we have your soul, we have like your own relationship to the unconscious. And archetypes is a whole thing on its own. I might make a video or a podcast about that in particular, because I find it very interesting to bring in archetypes as well. Even though I view the planets as archetypes, but we can work with it in different ways. We can look at archetypes as this unpersonal persona. For example, there's an archetype of the victim. Everyone can, if I say the victim, everyone can relate. We can understand what this means. And if we make it objective and impersonalize the energy of the victim, we can put it onto our life situation, and with our awareness detect if we fall into the victim archetype. And we have so many different archetypes. We have like the hermit, we have the hero, we have the old wise woman or man. Like there's a lot of different. You could say that you could also analyze mythology through the lens of archetypes, trying to detect the different archetypes in mythology. And the zodiac sign, they are also archetypes, but you could break it down even more. And I have thought about if I would to do that, like take Aries, for example, and talk about different archetypes that could be in Aries, like the warrior and so on. And when we get archetypes as a language and we get more understanding of the archetype, we get more awareness in general. So awareness about archetypes is really important. And then looking at your moon placement as this is the part of your unconscious that you are not very familiar with most times. And it's kind of like this undercurrent energy driving your habits, driving your life force, driving your body, the needs. And through the lens of the zodiac, you can understand how your unconsciousness works, what it needs, and how it experiences itself. And you then, if you would to correlate this onto the sky, so the sun needs to shine light onto the moon for it to illuminate. So you would need to bring in your more yang energy from the sun, since it's the masculine principle, onto your feminine receptive moon principle to illuminate with your consciousness the unconscious patterns. And this is where you can understand your sun sign first and then try to turn it onto your moon to see and understand a bigger part of you and try to give directions to your unconscious. You can try to steer and understand your maybe like your needs, and with your more masculine principle put frameworks on top of your moon. I'm hoping that this will not be very woo-woo, if that's a good way to say it. Like, I hope it's resonating for you, and I trust that it will. If you are listening to this podcast, you probably resonate with my view of the world, so I trust that it will. So your unconscious, your personal unconscious, is important to say, is your intuition, it's your body, it's your dreams, it's the cyclical nature of you and your body. Just like the moon, it's not this conscious will, it's this way of experiencing yourself that you are more like observing. It's not like, it's sometimes we can't really feel a personal connection to the moon in a sense that this is me. We can observe that I work in this kind of energetic way, but it's much more like this, maybe the conditioning aspect of how you grew up and your like inherited habits and ways of being. And for the man, it can be your relationship to the anima, which is Carl Jung concept that I will make a video on, I think, in the future. But if you know, you know. To put it very simply, anima for a man could be where he projects out the feminine principles onto other women, but it's meant to, since we are both yin-yang energy, in the healthier and more mature aspects, he would integrate these feminine principles in himself when it comes to nurturing and being in contact with femininity as an energy. This is anima, and putting a name on it, like the term anima, helps you objectify the experience of this like pull or draw towards the polarity of your sex onto something else. For the woman, and it's not like this gender thing, it's very energetic, so you can be a homosexual man, for example, and project your animus. Like, it doesn't have to be this rigid thing, but just energetically speaking, if we would to continue this example with a woman that is straight, she would project her animus on men, and then in the highest and maturest aspect she would integrate it onto herself, in herself, and not become codependent on a man to be the masculine principle in the world, but she would integrate it in herself in a form that she's portraying the masculine principle, like structure, protection, in herself in a healthy aspect. And this then would be that the sun for a woman could be where she needs that animus aspect in herself. So I'm thinking now of maybe to continue down my list that I made. And if I would maybe go into Mercury now. I've been fascinated with Mercury for a while. I find the mythology to be very interesting. It's Hermes, like this winged messenger between the gods and the mortals. And the key here is to, because we know that Mercury is the intellect, how we understand, how we interpret information, and how we communicate, our linear mind. But in the mythology, Mercury is the bridge between the conscious and the unconscious. And the archetype of Mercury is the trickster. It's the like the bridge between these two. And it's the power of the word. So it's this neutral, it's not like feminine or masculine energy, it's this neutral middleman between the two. And where we see this interplay. So if I would to take an example here, I have my Mercury in the 5th house in Pisces. So what this could mean for me, since it is in the same zodiac sign as my moon, and I do have a stellium in Pisces, that would mean, like my example with the sun principle and the moon, would not mean that I have more consciousness when it comes to my sun. It's where I feel a pull to individuate, to become more whole, become myself. And since I have a stellium in the same zodiac sign as my moon, I do have a very strong pull or energetic familiarity with my moon, and I'm born at night, and according to ancient astrology, if you are born at night, the sun is more in the behind the scenes, because the moon is more visible when you're born. So I do have a very like recognition to my moon sign. But since it's like meddled with also my Saturn in Pisces and my Venus in Pisces and my moon, it becomes a bit like if you would to make a big soup and taking out one ingredient when the soup is already mixed together. That is kind of like the idea of having a stellium and trying to put some types of lines between the individual archetypes and forces in my stellium. But if I would to still take myself as an example, my Mercury, the trickster energy, the awareness between the conscious and unconscious, the middleman, is working through the lens of Pisces, which is this very intuitive and like blurring the lines between the reality and my feelings. So it's working through a very non-linear way of communicating with me. And that would mean that I process information not like this, like Mercury is how we intellectually understand things. It's like through Pisces lens, it would be that I learn very much through feelings. I learn through, since it's also in my 5th house, it's like I learn through creativity and art. This is like how I understand things, how my intellect works, and how it's integrating information. Like I learn so much through movies. I learn so much through music, and I also feel like I really learn when I'm producing something. Like it's because I think it's the 5th house, but also the Pisces, that I feel like I channel things. So I get this intuitive feeling, a draw towards something, that I feel like something is here, something is drawing me in, and then I give it space. I try to create something, maybe by producing a masterclass, or I do a YouTube video, and when I do it, I feel like I am saying things that might have not yet been clicking in my own mind. So I'm actually teaching myself. And I feel like that is the Pisces in the Mercury. Like it's this coming from this other place. And when I say it, it's channeled through me. And then I edit whatever I just said. And then I get taught it much deeper. So I'm kind of like my own teacher in a way. So it's this impersonal kind of channeling force. And I think this is where it becomes, for people with Pisces, and it's always connected to the spiritual thing, and you can be a medium. And for me, it never feels like I don't resonate to that. But I resonate to feeling like I have a connection to the unconscious. I can bridge myself to that part or to that field of the collective unconscious, because Pisces is very tapped into the collective unconscious. This unconditional love for humanity, this impersonal force. And I do feel like the Mercury comes through in creative processes through this channeling energy. And it can also be like I am sometimes very questioning myself when it comes to information like astrology. It's been very healing for me to do astrology, because I feel like what I say, my words are so like I can't always back it up with logic. I just feel when something is right, and that can create a lot of doubt in me, because I sometimes think that, okay, where did this come from? And it makes me in a world where we are very like atheist at the moment, still like very like focused on science, and yeah, like everything like this, like it's very linear. We want to explain through science, and I get this emotional resonance when it comes to my understanding of things. Sometimes it's making me very unsure of my words. And if unsure of also if people will understand what I'm saying, if I'm just talking, because I have experienced a lot of times people not understanding what I'm saying and being misunderstood, because maybe it's not at all what I wanted to come across, and then feeling very alone in not being understood in the way that I want to. And this can be like the unstructuredness of Pisces in Mercury. But it's, if we go back to the archetype of Mercury, it's this trickster energy of like, if we want to personalize what the communication bridge between the conscious and unconscious is, it's this like kind of like luring you into an understanding energy. How can I explain this better? Let me feel into it. Because for me it doesn't satisfy to just say it's our intellect, it's our like understanding. Maybe if we take what I said about the sun and the moon, and it could be this like, let's picture this, like if you look up, if you pause this right now and Google Hermes, the winged messenger, or Mercury mythology, and get a picture in your mind of what Mercury looks like, and you realize or think about that Mercury is not this, it's not the like subject or object in itself, it's not like this realistic person that we need to hold in our memory and also add on the zodiac sign, but it's the concept of what Mercury represents through the mythology that we are trying to pinpoint. And then understanding that the mythology is explaining a phenomena in the human psyche. So maybe that helps to make the understanding of what Mercury would represent a bit more. So maybe it is this tottering, like seesawing between the sun and the moon, and how you communicate is through the conscious and the unconscious, like understanding and discovering more. And maybe also it would be good to say that, like, the Mercury aspect, the sun is the pull and the consciousness towards the self, the expansion, and the Mercury is more this communication aspect of the consciousness that goes from the unconscious and brings it up to consciousness. So it is this literally winged messenger between the two worlds that just goes between them, and it can be both internally in form of your thoughts that you get, the inspiration that you get, but also when you communicate with other people. So for example, now I'm in my Mercury energy. I'm in the Mercury in the 5th house in Pisces. So this is maybe you all that listen to this are very familiar with my Mercury in Pisces energy. Because it is this communication system between the two. The flexibility between the two parts. And it's also the comedian, the trickster energy. It is very interesting to think about Mercury as like comedians. They are Mercury. They are, if you look at, or if you watch a stand-up, you can see the Hermes, like the Mercury trickster energy in them. And oftentimes they do totter between the line of like taking you one place and then switching up. They could set up a situation like leading up to a punchline, and you think that it's going somewhere, and then they completely shift, and that's what making you laugh because you are surprised. This is the energy of Mercury. And it's interesting to think about this type of energy, like why is it like the trickster archetype if it's just like the unconscious pulling a prank on the consciousness because the consciousness believes that it's in charge. This is something to ponder on, because we also have the unconscious, like the personal unconscious is the moon, but then we have the collective unconscious, which is the universal intelligence, which is more like the Neptune archetype, like the god energy. And this is where it's also like this is where I picture the collective archetype. If we put like a hierarchy, I would put it at a top. And if we put it in the clouds, like the god's sphere, like the Olympus, mountain Olympus, the gods there, like the collective unconscious, all of humanity, all of the plant kingdom, like the earth elements, like everything, the collective unconscious, and the god intelligence at the top. And then it split, it prickles, or not prickles, it like drizzles down into like different types of expressions of the consciousness. And these are the different types of people on this planet, and the animals, and everyone's own expression of their life. And they are their selves, they are like their totality. And they have the social mask, the ego that they put on out to the world, that they adopted from their surroundings when they grew up by their social conditioning. And they have different aspects of their psyche that wants to pull them onto discovering one aspect of themselves deeper, like they have their life theme, their life path, and they have their own unconsciousness, which is their own personal expression of the totality of this like mountain Olympus, God, universal intelligence, and that is their soul, and their soul lives in the personal unconscious. So the high at the top would be your Neptune, and the personal unconscious would be your moon, to put it into easy terms. And the Mercury would then go through the through this like hierarchy line from the gods to then like drizzle down onto your personal unconscious, where it's translated into your own expression of the world and your perception and memories, and then into your consciousness. I think maybe that was a good way to explain it. So maybe just continuing now with your Venus placement, and then maybe I'll end it there because we're almost up an hour now. So your Venus in your chart is the feminine archetype of beauty, pleasure, and love. So when you have your Venus in the shadow, it can be like your need for outer validation and a sense of like feeling that you are not worth love. And many times we look at the Venus to understand how we are in relationships. And it can be a nice way to work with Venus, to see like how you view beauty and harmony in the world. But for me, it doesn't really give much to just work with Venus in that way. For me, as a woman, it would mean to understand where your sense of femininity comes in. And if you check the mythology, it would be the Aphrodite energy. And this is the unconscious feminine energy, the archetype of femininity, which would be, in the shadow aspect, it would be very focused on power, over others. Like as a woman, you could be this competitiveness from external validation of her beauty being very important for her. Like I'm talking about Aphrodite now, the mythology. And wanting to have control over men, like this seductive energy. So this could be like the shadow aspect of your Venus placement as a woman, but it could also be in a higher expression. It could tell you how you feel feminine. It can be your goddess energy. It can be how you feel balance in the world, how you create from a powerful place, how you have healthy values, empathy, and belonging. So exploring this is basically exploring your relationship to you and others. And this is important in order to explore how the ego hits a good balance point when it comes to others and other things, and really in belonging to humanity and not being separate, not feeling separation, but being in the right type of proportion, let's say, or ratio. Ratio is a good word. How you are in ratio to your surrounding. And this, like, if you can work with this energy, it is wow, like it is such a important thing, much deeper than just how you love or how, like, you, what kind of partner you need or want or how you are in relationships. It's so much deeper than just your love interest. So really exploring that with the understanding of the real key, or like the core thing of Venus, this balance ratio point of you and others, you and other things, and then finding the perfect symphony in life, like learning who you are towards your environment, your surrounding. I would say that this is like the great way to transform and level up your ego's relationship to its surrounding, and how you create and have your personal relationship to creativity and beauty in the world. So it could also, Venus is this relational planet where you also get reflected on your relationships with other people. So it's this kind of like this Libra energy of what Libra is in its highest expression. It's this balance point between the self and other, and not just other people, but with everything in relation to everything on life, like on earth. So it would be just finding your center point when you are in the 3D reality. So finding what's the word for that? Or okay, I could just use finding the balance point. And in Venus, that could be a very big clue on how you feel in relationship to other people. So first I would say to check your Venus zodiac sign to understand how you experience this beauty and like the Aphrodite mythology in its highest expression. So depending on whichever zodiac sign you have, checking the high expression of that zodiac sign could tell you how you would experience this beauty of the world, this romanticization of relationship and relational intelligence, I would actually say. So like learning where enough is enough and taking accountability for the enoughness really is what it is. And this means in every aspect, really like understanding the need for the balance here, and then understanding the mythology of Aphrodite, seeing the middle point between others and yourself, following this like principle of the sweet spot that is what Venus represents, really. So also working with worth is important here, and that's where I feel like the balance point in your Venus placement in relationship to other things and other people, learning to be your own center first in relation to other people and not like losing yourself in other people and stuff like this. Because we can draw parallels to Libra. This is like if you have Libra rising or Libra sun or moon, it's a very important thing to learn the mythology and the lesson of Libra. But since we do have this archetype, everyone has Venus in their chart, and being in relationship to other people and other things is something that everyone experiences. So Venus, the lesson of Libra is still there. Just like if you are Aquarius, you do have Uranus and Saturn. Everyone has them in their chart. So all of the lessons we have in different intensified versions depending on our natal chart. So the lesson of Libra and Taurus being under Venus's ruling, like the Venus being the ruling planet for these two, it's also something that is very important for everyone to understand the like the sweet spot between the self and others, and learning how to relate in a sense that it's not depending on external validation, but being more in contact with our own worth when it comes to being with other people and other things. So I think this is the first part. I thought before this that I could like probably do all of the planets in an hour, talk about it for a few minutes, but of course not. So I hope this has been rewarding and made you think a bit of how you think about the different planets. And please comment if you want to share your take on these placements, these archetypes. And I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.